Hi, welcome back to the Illuminated Castle. Thank you so much again for subscribing. Your support means so much to me. I'm so grateful. And today I am speaking with Ulrika Sullivan. She is a Western tropical astrologer as well as a galactic astrologer. And I've had her on my podcast before, and I'm just so honored to have her back. So, Ulrika, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alli. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation.
So my thank you, thank you. And so for this conversation today, we're really going to be speaking about astrology again through that galactic lens. And I wanted to mention that as you go in deeper into understanding, into knowing thyself through astrology, you begin to understand consciousness and the consciousness of yourself on a very multidimensional level. So we're even referring to, say, the planet Mars and the consciousness of Mars that it carries in your chart. So we may have a placement of Mars in one of our houses as one of these energy systems. And so it really helps give you an understanding of how that energy expresses itself through you in the form of consciousness. And today we're going to be speaking about uh, placements that might be quite new. So we're speaking about, and again, this is really a conversation around consciousness and the astrology of that. And so we are going to be referring to these aspects on the chart as something like a black hole. However, astronomically, they do have a very different terminology. But the idea behind this conversation, we really want everyone to know, is that you very well likely have these placements of these black holes in your chart. And we want you to know that they're very powerful and they're very beautiful placements. And we want to teach and show you how to discover this in your own chart. So, Ulrika, I'm going to give the floor to you to introduce these energies of consciousness, and I will allow you to lead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share a couple of slides because sometimes it's easier to kind of just point out a couple of things. And we are going to look at also a couple of charts because many of you are interested, like, how can I find these points in my own chart and what does it mean? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, but first let's do some basics around what I call galactic points. And as Alli mentioned, it really is referring to vast energy within our universe, but also, who knows, multiple universes and galaxies. So I'm going to give you a perspective of what we know today and what different points, because there are different points that we can identify in our charts that represent, consciousness in order of magnitude. And sometimes it can be, very heart opening and to know that you may have multiple alignments within your chart, within your unique energetic imprint to these vast sources of what I call wisdom, a universal wisdom. And what we're doing here, we're really raising our awareness around consciousness, and because that's, to be able to know what you have access to and expand into that awareness about ourselves. So with that, I'm going to share my screen just to give you a little view here. Let's see. We are going to first slideshow. So I hope that we will be visible still, you and I, up in the corner there. And these slides, oops, these slides are just support for kind of how to talk about this, because again, bring yourself now to the biggest, most vast perspective that you ever can kind of relate to, and we're going to go beyond that. And what you see on this image here is the Galactic Center. It's an image that I copied from the NASA website, and of course there's like some color made to it, but basically what both of these images are energy that swirls around in the universe. And it really, what I usually say is that what we're going to talk about today is really how the universe is run, what makes it go around, if you will, because all of us, wherever we are in the universe, if we take like the biggest perspective we can even imagine, it's made of energy, and energy has to move. So this is an image that invites us to step into that perspective of how the universe is run, basically, how it goes around, because it is really, from what we know, lots of different directions of energy that, and as we know in our solar system, for example, we know that there are cycles, our planets that we often relate to, Mars, Mercury, all of the personal planets and beyond. It's always a cycle. And in the bigger universe, it's a cycle as well. So I want to just, yeah.
Well, I wanted to mention, Ulrika, one of the moments that really stuck with me in high school, it was one of the laws, and it was that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. And I feel like that's so powerful and so true when we understand ourselves in this greater picture.
Oh, that's really profound, because it's one of the truths, if you will, that goes, that we rely on even that far out in the universe as the Galactic Center. And I want to show this next image because if you're listening or watching this, you may have heard of the Galactic Center, which is what we have up here. And we're going to talk about how to identify these points in your chart. But there's actually 3 more even bigger energy centers that we're going to talk about today as well, that also are identifiable in a chart. And that is the Supergalactic Center, the Great Attractor, and the Shapley Attractor. So what's the difference between these 4 vast, centers of energy, centers of wisdom, universal wisdom? Now, the Galactic Center is really in the middle of the Milky Way. So if we, as humans, we want to put this into perspective, but in order of magnitude, yes, the Galactic Center is what we in this solar system is mostly driven by. Many of you have heard about the Galactic Center, and that's really the center of our solar system and the Milky Way. So that is what we may, I would say, have most access to, or that influences us the most, because it's technically closest to us here on Earth. And it's it's about 26,000 light years away from Earth. Now, when it comes, and if you think about the Galactic Center as a center of wisdom, if you will, or a mass of energy, it's about 400 million times bigger than the sun. So that's just to give you some, sense of magnitude here. And it basically is our closest transmitter of divine consciousness, if you will. So it's related to Sagittarius. In the constellation Sagittarius, it sits at 27 degrees. And if you want to take some notes here, and we're going to identify in your chart later where 27 degrees of Sagittarius is located. But basically, that's where we can pinpoint in our charts where the galactic center is located. And if you think about Sagittarius, the characteristics of that sign, it's very much expansion, evolution that sign stands for. So that's interesting to kind of think of what that means. Now, Galactic Center has been known by us, as far as what we know, since 1974, but that's modern time. What we know about ancient wisdom is that many of the indigenous people were very much more tuned into the galactic movements, right? Following the fixed stars, so likely this galactic center is also something that indigenous people were tuned into and drawing from, downloads, divine wisdom. So I wouldn't say 1974 is like some milestone, because it's more how we were invited in modern time to start relating to this. So in 1974. But truly, if we bring it up a notch, our solar system and the galactic center and the closest, if you will, black hole, because yes, it is a black hole astronomically as well. It is divine truth, basically the energy of divine truth. And it's probably the easiest energy for us as humans here now to connect with. So knowing in your chart where this point is located and what house, that can give you some insights to how this energy may influence you today and what you have access to. And December 18th to 20th each year in Western tropical astrology, the sun is conjunct the galactic center. So pay attention to those dates, because when the sun is shining a light on the galactic center, we can, have really profound insights to come to us. But that's the same date every year. So that's good. It's just a little bit of trivia to know about it. Yeah, so let's move on, because the super galactic center is the next one. And if you think about, like, the super galactic center is the next octave of the galactic center. So it's almost like this relationship between a parent and a child, if you will. So the super galactic center is a black hole, defined by astronomy as well. Those two are. And it includes actually over 30 galaxies. So if you think of the magnitude, now we're going up, right? And in terms of magnitude, and the super galactic center is located, we can locate it in our chart at 2 degrees of Libra. So that's going to be important for you to know, like, where do I have 2 degrees of Libra in my chart? And do
Can I
have
ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. So seeing as how we're kind of going in order of magnitude, if you have access in your chart to the consciousness of the super galactic center, does that mean that it's possible that because they sort of grow together that you would also likely have access to the galactic center, or are they're just specific placements that would give you access to that energy? So if someone had access to both the galactic center and super galactic, they would need to have these 2 placements in their chart. That's correct?
Yes. Yes, that's how we interpret it. And no one point can be interpreted in isolation. So always when we interpret someone's energy imprint, if you will, at least that's how I do it, I look at the holistic picture of everything before any kind of conclusions are made, right? But theoretically, you can have a personal alignment or placement in your chart to 2 degree of Libra and not to 27 of Sagittarius. I think that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Because it's not, really, it's not on a string, if you will. If you have one, you have the other. No. But to interpret, it can give us an indication of the magnitude of the wisdom that a person have access to, because one person might just have one alignment. Other people might have multiple. I have had clients who have all of these exact in a chart, for example. And that means that the magnitude of energy that person have access to work with energetically can be greater, if you will. But it's never but it depends on what you want to do with it. Some people decide not to work with that energy and some do. So it's never like, if you have this, you're going to get that.
And then also, I wanted to mention as well that we have to remember that each zodiac also has its shadow aspect. So we have, as energetic beings, access to both the light and shadow aspects of these energies. And so oftentimes, that energy may at one point express itself in the shadow aspect. So it's just interesting as a side to discuss that, but carry on.
Absolutely. And one other thing I want to say between this parent and child, if you will, is that in a chart, the supergalactic center will always square the galactic center. And you'll see that when we look at the circular chart. And that will always happen, right? It will always be a square between these points in a chart. But how do we interpret that? Because, but it's exactly like that, parent and child, the inner, the outer, the positive, it's a little bit of duality between the supergalactic center and galactic center location wise in the chart. But what is really the insight here is that within us, there's always this little bit of tension, right? That depending on where these points are in your chart, you will likely feel some sort of subconscious tension. And that can give you a lot of insight. But by degree, these 2 points in your chart will always square each other.
So interesting.
But when it comes to magnitude, it's like, if you think about galactic center as our closest, black hole to us, which may be more personal, the supergalactic center is more that multidimensional energy, if you will, going 30 galaxies, including that type of magnitude and truth. Now, if we move on, the great attractor, and I have an image next, I think, that shows you just a pictorial of a little bit how it can look like energetically. The great attractor sits at 14 degrees of Sagittarius. And to give you a feel for it, includes 100,000 galaxies in magnitude. That's at least, this is human estimates, if you will. And so it's a multiverse, if we think that, like, now we're going super big, right?
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
And it is, and it's a million times bigger in terms of energetic mass than the Milky Way. So I don't know, it's hard to get our head around the magnitude of these, estimates, if you will. But the great attractor has been clearly important when it comes to bringing opportunity for us to, tune into consciousness. And the great attractor is one of those that really, the universe goes around. And it's, what else? And it's about 2 billion light years away. So it's like, again, it's hard to kind of get a sense for this, but there is more. There is more, because the Shapley Attractor, you can see the big, big circle around that, is located at 2 degrees of Scorpio. And that is a supercluster that has to do with the pure, something pure, right? Innocent truth that, and it's the biggest influence of the biggest magnitude of influence that we currently know, as far as I know. And the Shapley Attractor is really about oneness. If we think consciousness now, and if we bring it back to our charts, right? The Shapley Attractor, anyone who has an alignment, a conjunct, a direct alignment to the Shapley Attractor, have access to work with immense energy, like oneness. And it's hard to put words to it, right? But it's a supercluster. And if we think about what Scorpio stands for, it really is that depth of it all, both the good and the bad, right?
A question about the Shapley Attractor. So at what point in the year is Shapley Attractor activated through the alignments? Like you were mentioning, the 18th to the 21st of December would be the Galactic Center. I was just curious if you happen to know the period of activation for that. Like anyone who has it in their chart has access to that, but there's also a period where it's most the frequency and the ability to connect with it is higher. And I was curious if you happen to know the dates of that, just out of curiosity.
Identify that, but that's exactly what we want to do. We want to know when we, uniquely us, have a specific alignment to an important fixed star or galactic point in our charts for divine insight, basically, and meditate maybe a little longer, or just prioritize to meditate those certain days, because we can get divine downloads and insights that comes to us because that alignment, it's this flow of energy that we have access to. So yeah, highly recommended.
Amazing.
I wanted to show this is kind of an energy chart that can show you, we have location of the Milky Way is over here. Let's say you can see the Milky Way just plotted out in the image here. But the purpose of this image is just to show you, for example, the great attractor here. Visually, it seems a lot bigger than the Milky Way over there, right? It's just a matter of the showing the energetics as plotted out by Outer Space Central here, and they created this image. But this is how energy works, right? There is this flow, a natural flow in the universe, as I sense it here, right? But it's just bigger wheels that drives this universe, if you will, depending on if it's a galactic center that's located here in our Milky Way, or let's say, for example, the great attractor that runs, over 100,000 galaxies. So it's like, yeah. So I hope you get a little sense for kind of the magnitude between all of these 4 points. But all in all, the purpose of us knowing about these points in our charts is very similar. It is for us to realize that we have access to so much more, cosmic energy than we think we have.
Beautiful.
Now, let's dive into a chart here. And as an example, this could be someone's chart, someone's birth chart, but I chose to just point out, an event that is right now when we are recording this in May 2023, and that's the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And here's the chart for that lunar eclipse. And the reason I picked this was that it's a great example of how these galactic points can influence us collectively. So specifically, our lunar eclipse here have two alignments, two really important alignments. And, we can always look at, conjuncts or opposites, but also trines, sextiles, and squares. Now, for simplicities for this conversation, I've only plotted out the conjunct and opposites. But of course, there's different interpretation that can be made, whether it's a trine or a sextile or a square as well. But you get the point here. Now, I want to point out how you can identify these galactic points in your chart. So your birth chart will look different, obviously, but anywhere you have Libra, for example, is the supergalactic center, 2 degrees of Libra, right there. So you would go and identify where you have this glyph, the Libra glyph, and go to 2 degrees. Each zodiac signs have 30 degrees, and that house where 2 degrees of Libra is, in this case, it's the second house, would be important to know. The other point here that is really highlighted within the lunar eclipse is that the south node, there was no glyph for the south node here, so I inserted a pair of headphones upside down. But I thought it was really important to know, because the south node is exactly conjunct in this, is exactly, the position of the south node is exactly conjunct the Shapley Attractor. And what does this mean? Well, both Scorpio, I would say, and the south node are heavily linked into karma and release of karma, if you will. So, wow, what a great, like, Shapley Attractor. You mean that big circle? And it's like the biggest magnitude of releasing karma. That's how I interpret this alignment. Like, there's a highway through the universe for people to release the past, and it's a call that we are strongly getting from the universe to kind of, okay, this is it. It's conjunct the Shapley Attractor.
I've been feeling this energy.
Let go.
Yeah,
right?
It's been powerful.
Yeah. And the great attractor at 14 of Sagittarius, and the galactic center here is 27 Sagittarius. Now, Venus in the chart of the lunar eclipse is opposite the galactic center. And in this chart, it sits in the 10th house. But what does that mean? Well, galactic center, as I mentioned in the beginning, is really the black hole that runs our galaxy, if you will, in the Milky Way. So Venus is here to, as an opposite alignment, is really here to bring the heart, into the mix in our consciousness. And why, when it's opposite, it may be also that we've been waiting for a long time. It has been, and it's dependent on this release of karma as well, because an opposite alignment is often when we're invited later into in our life or later into the process. And Venus is here to really highlight, okay, Milky Way galaxy, like wake up to the divine feminine, wake up to the heart, wake up to connect with these big energies that we have access to. So this is how you can identify them in your own chart, identifying Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, and you have them there. And the conjunct alignments are always the most obvious. I also wanted to show you how a galactic astrology chart looks like, and it's more of in this form. And what you can see here is all the other alignments to fixed stars, including the galactic points for the lunar eclipse. And here we see, for example, well, I'll show you Venus first, the opposite alignment to the galactic center here. If you follow that line row number 8. And we also have the south node conjunct the Shapley Attractor. And of course, the north node is opposite because they're always opposite each other. But that's how you will see, if you run there, you can get your own galactic chart. That's galacticastrochart.com. But we can also see what other fixed stars and points are important because you asked me before, like, how can we tune into these other points? Not just, how do we know? So in this lunar eclipse, Andromeda is it's a conjunct, the sun is conjunct Andromeda Almach, for example. And this is a simplified chart. There's a whole bunch of other aspects going on, but just to not overwhelm everyone, I just pulled out the conjunct and opposite alignments. So Andromeda is very visible, shining the light on this lunar eclipse, and the moon, obviously, because it's a full moon, they're opposite each other. Now, there's also access to the Andromeda galaxy, which is conjunct Jupiter, where Jupiter is at the time of the lunar eclipse. So Andromeda is heavily activated or involved in this lunar eclipse. Saturn is conjunct Fomalhaut, which is, Saturn is our true teacher, right? It keeps us in check. And clearly it has an angelic, we have angelic support through this release of the past through the south node, clearly. And Pluto is conjunct Lyra Aladfar. And if you can see here, the orb here it's exact. There's only zeros there. The other parentheses are indicating the degree and the orb. But Pluto is clearly tapping into one of the cradles of human souls from a galactic heritage. There's many of us who have galactic heritage with Lyra constellation. And Pluto is right aligned to that constellation to help us really relate to what's going on. And so this is just a very simplified example of what we can read from the lunar eclipse as an example. And to make this even more personal, I pulled up Alli's chart here that we're going to take a look at. I'm going to move you up. So here's Alli's natal chart and her galactic chart. And again, it's very simplified. I pulled out a lot of information just to not have too crowded of a chart. She has a very crowded chart in terms of galactic alignments, which is great. And one thing that I found, and that we're going to just point out very quickly, is that her Neptune is conjunct the great attractor. She has a number of other alignments to the other points, but this is the most prominent, the great attractor and your Neptune, and it's in the 4th house. So this is what you would do if you're listening or watching to this. You would take your natal chart, you would run a galactic chart, and you would look at where these points are plotted out in your chart. And for Alli, her Neptune, which has to do with her cosmic wisdom, her connection to spirituality and everything that Neptune stands for, she has a direct line to the great attractor. And the great attractor, if you remember, is that, immense 100,000 galaxies driver in the universe. And in the 4th house, it means that she is here, likely to help build a foundation for this connection. Because the 4th house is home, our safety. She has it naturally in Sagittarius. However, it's intercepted, but it's something that she will continuously work to get more and more and more access to as she goes. And the great attractor is really that multiverse type of energy that she has access to. The 4th house, she is definitely here to not only build that awareness, trust her intuition within herself, but also likely be part of representing that access and way of relating. So that's just a very quick little, intuitive download on what this Neptune is doing for you in relation to these galactic points. And there's the orb usually we use specifically for the great attractor is between 5-7 degrees, and your alignment here is 2 degrees, 2.19 from the exact alignment to the great attractor. So that's pretty spot on, I would say. Yeah.
Wow. It's a lot. It's very activating to even see my chart shown from a galactic perspective, just to read some of these, galaxies, planets. It really allows this energy to flow, and for me personally to understand the ancientness of my soul. And my hope for each of you who's listening is that you begin to see yourself, and I'm sure Ulrika would agree, the intention of this presentation is for each of you to really go in to your chart, and I will be placing a link below, and to really just look at it from an intuitive perspective. Just allow the energies to come towards you and feel into it. What draws your attention? What energies do you feel when you look at it? And that really we are, and Ulrika has mentioned this, we are beginning to understand ourselves from that multi-dimensional energy. And it is a beautiful gift to understand how divine we are and how powerful we are as creators. And we were speaking a lot about these energies, and truly the imagination and our ability to create through the use of our imagination is so powerful. It is unlimited, and we are beginning to understand that power within us. And
yes, an awareness about our unlimited, part of ourselves, that it can help us to kind of really let go of the limitations that we place on ourselves and what we're capable of. So yes, I love that you're bringing up that it feels like it's expanding within you, because that it really is helping us align to that expansive energy that we do have access to, and to make it also understandable, and allowing us to interpret our own unique energetic imprint is very empowering. So yeah, I can't wait to, Alli has a lot more, alignments to the galactic points than what I showed you, but uh, again, sextiles, trines, squares, and often those aspects are where we either are working on something or can learn something, get really profound insights in the interpretation as a whole, as a chart as a whole, is really where the unique imprint is coming through.
And I want to mention, for anyone who is new to astrology, that really and truly my journey into astrology happened in December of last year. I felt this incredible call into my chart. So if you are new to astrology, you're in a safe space. I would just encourage you to dive in. I would love, Ulrika, to have you on again to speak more, even about just the Western tropical astrology. I mean, there's so many points of interest that we can speak about as we dive into this just beautiful understanding of ourselves and consciousness. So we will be putting all of the links below. And, if you have any questions, definitely reach out. And of course, if you are interested in having your galactic astrology done by Ulrika, you absolutely can reach out to her and she can take care of that for you. And you are, receiving these beautiful activations and wisdoms of your truest self. So that is, of course, always an option as well. Thank you, Ulrika, for this illuminating conversation. And I'm so grateful. I really, truly hope that everyone who is watching has received. I'm sure they have received some beautiful offerings from this. And is there anything you wanted to say in closing?
No, just like if you have questions, just drop them in we will read all the questions, and maybe we can, bring up the questions in an upcoming episode, because it's important to listen to what you're curious about, and really what this type of information does for us is that it helps us understand who we truly are, our true self, and so that we can, like the South Node is asking us now at this time, to really let go of our limitations and invite that big energy and let that fill us with inspiration, creativity. And one of the things I also always are asking or requesting from others when they get a reading from me, for example, is to really sit with this information and make it, really take the time to integrate what these insights may mean for you in your life now. Because even if we are tapping into our multidimensional self, it is here we are now, and how we can, evolve in our current life. And it is fascinating to see how this type of insight can really open up immense wisdom and creativity within someone. So yeah, it's important to sit with the information and really take it in.
Amazing. Thank you, Ulrika. We are all here at this moment in time for a reason. I want to leave everyone with that understanding that we are powerful aspects of divine consciousness, and we are powerful creators, and we are here for quite a spectacular coming years. And my imagination is just going wild right now with the potentials. So yes, exactly. Okay. Thank you so much, Ulrika. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and we're just sending you all so much love.
Thank you. Bye-bye.